our baseline connection here is we both did the JET program, right?
Yep.
But you joined a little bit later after me. I mean, basically, you were part of the quote unquote next generation, because I did it from 2009 to 2012, and I think you were on board
The year after.
Yeah, the year right after. And in some of your videos, and we might touch upon it, like I think you gave a really good, honest talk about ups and downs of doing JET. And, you know, right before we hit the record button, we were kind of talking about how important it is to have that conversation instead of just being polarizing on like the positive or the negative, because especially when it comes to the JET program, especially when it comes to Japan, you have diehard fanboys and lovers, and then you just have like extreme haters. And nothing is completely black and white like that. There's just kind of like the middle ground that's there. And for me, you know, since dude, it's almost a decade since doing JET, but every step of the way since being back, I've tried to be very frank about what it was. Because am I grateful about my time over there? For sure. But has it been difficult adjusting back? Yeah, it has been. And I've met a lot of people where it was difficult to adjust back, and they stay quieter about it because they're embarrassed, or they feel shame that they couldn't make that smooth career transition. But because not a lot of people talk about it, people get more surprised, and it just kind of like spirals into like a bigger and bigger problem. Now, that being said, I think the conversations and podcasts I've done before talking about the JET program in that way, while important, that's the stuff that doesn't trend. Who wants to hear that stuff? That's not going to be the million views and clicks. So I laid all that out there for people who aren't familiar with me, and they might not be familiar with you, but I think that's also our connection point, because what you saw and what you commented on was when I made a video about should you do the JET program again, a second time. And I don't remember where I saw the prompt that was initially there. I can't remember if someone reached out to me specifically, but I just tried to lay out that conversation, like, why might you do it? And why it's probably not a good idea for a lot of people, and why I wouldn't do it. And that resonated with you. And you did grad school, right? Instead of, I don't know, were you even tempted of doing the JET program a second year? Maybe that's where we can start off. Long intro out of the way, but it's your time to shine, Jordan.
Yeah, so I did grad school like 6 months after JET. When I finished the JET program, I was pretty sure that I had enough. And I did help out with like the pre-departure seminars for my JET, I guess the sector that I'm attached to in New York. And yeah, I've met some JETs there that actually did it for a second time, and I thought about it like I wonder why would they go to JET again? Because like I remember when I came back from Japan, like similar to what you were talking about in the video, I had a quite difficult time trying to find a job. It was more so difficult like my second time coming from Japan, like right after grad school, than the first time, but still, regardless, I had a difficult time. But yeah, so going back to my, I guess my background, I finished the JET program. I worked in New Jersey, where I'm from, as a language teacher for about 6 months. And then I went right back to Japan for grad school for 2 years. And then I came back to New Jersey, and here I am.
So was grad school something that you always knew that you were gonna do, especially because you still work with education, right?
Right.
And maybe that's something that you predetermined like early on, versus like a lot of other people, they kind of do the JET program as kind of a, for lack of a better word, a distraction, or like a sidestep before they get serious with their career, right?
Right. Well, I guess when I first went to Japan, like that's all I wanted to do was just go to Japan. I wasn't really thinking that far. I was kind of young and naive and just enjoying the moment.
I'm just going to interrupt you real quick because I don't think that's like a dock against you. Like that's for most people. How would you know when you're fresh out of college, you know?
Right. Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I was like, I remember like specifically, like I was placed in Hirosaki, Aomori, Japan when I was on the JET program. And I was at one of my coworkers' husband's house, who he's an American and my coworker is Japanese. And they always have like a barbecue and invite us over, me and my coworkers, other JET friends, etc. And her husband is a university teacher. And I just remember thinking like, wow, he has a really nice house. a pretty nice, quiet, laid back life in Japan. And I'm quite sure he's making pretty good money as a university professor. So I was dead set on that's what I want to do. Like when I finished JET program, I want to go to grad school and I want to become a university professor. So I started doing the research and I found out, okay, you got to have at least a master's degree. So I figured, okay, I have to go to grad school. And the process of going into grad school, especially when you've been out of school for like 3 years, I guess at that point, around 2016 for me, it's tough. Studying for the GREs, which it's tough in itself. Like, I guess more the studying the vocabulary and the writing the essays is difficult. And then figuring out which grad school that you can competitively apply for is difficult. And yeah, but I settled on a couple places in Japan and I applied to some. I got into some of the schools I wanted to get into, and others I really wanted to get into, I didn't get accepted. But yeah, so that's what pretty much got me into wanting to go to grad school in Japan, was because I wanted to become a university professor, specifically in Japan.
And from that time, going with like that trajectory to now, and I mean, we have like the big extenuating circumstances of COVID, which I don't know if that threw a wrench in your plans, but is the plan still to eventually do university teaching in Japan? Because you're in Jersey now, right?
Yeah, I'm in Jersey right now. No.
Okay.
My long-term goals have changed
Yeah.
significantly. And I hate to be that guy, but I think it's mostly because of money. I feel like being American, it has its pros and cons living here, just like it does in Japan. But I feel like one of the pros of living in America is that you have a much better chance of finding a salary job that pays well compared to if you go to Japan. Like it's probably easier to find a job in Japan, specifically if you want to like teach English, but the salary you get there is going to be way lower compared to what you would make here in America. So right now I work in America as a ESL teacher at a public elementary school. And I've actually taught college courses, ESL courses at a community college here. I kind of took a break off from it because of COVID, and just my current public school job is just like a bit much. It's a bit tolling on me right now. But yeah, I've got the experience like that I really wanted, which was teaching at a college, even though I didn't get to really do it in Japan like I wanted to.
Yeah, and from hearing you talk about that, like probably what I would want to just reiterate to anybody who's listening is things are going to change. I mean, of course, like nobody could predict like COVID situation, but whatever ideas that you have and you want to pursue, like, yeah, try it out. Or let me see if I can contextualize this. It's going to be harsh, or shut up about it. And what I mean about that is, especially, referencing the time in Japan, I don't know if you experienced this, Jordan, but how many people kept staying even though they kept complaining and talking about how much they hated Japan? So it's
So
like
many.
you get to make that call, right? If you want the stability and you want to stay there because you're scared, like that's totally reasonable too. But just shut up about that part or do something about it. Anyway, that's a tangent. That's a digression. I guess it's like easy for me to launch into that soapbox because I'm still trying to like pick out the pieces and figure out like what exactly it really is for that career trajectory. And I think it only made it harder for me because we were talking about like not having a lot of foresight, and having foresight is really hard when you're in your early 20s. But man, like one of the clearest moments in my life was saying I wanted to do the JET program. For me, I found out in my freshman year of university. I said, that's what I want to do. And I don't recommend anybody else doing it this way. But as soon as I knew that's what I wanted to do, I basically catered my like whole university career to like, how could I be the best candidate possible to get into that? And again, like we should qualify that where people should know that, JET program isn't the only thing out there. And I should interject this because the way the world works, or how everything is tied together, I am actually contracted with the consulate out here in Boston, and the JET program is underneath that. My views and opinions are completely my own, not affiliated with the Boston consulate. But living your life and you're like, I know exactly what I want to do. And even that transition of saying, oh, like I think I had my fill, and maybe this is what we can talk about next, but I thought I was going to do the full 5 years. I only ended up doing 3 because certain things changed. I felt like basically I kind of got everything that I could out of the experience, but going from I know exactly what I want to do to switching to, oh, it's time to be doing something more and better with my life without even knowing what that is. And I just
Right.
kind of been like stumbling, trying to connect the dots, just like in hindsight afterwards, right?
Right. And just to kind of reiterate what you were saying a little while ago, you mentioned that you kind of like tailored your college career towards
Hmm.
like going getting acceptance to the JET program. I did something very similar. Like I took classes that I thought would make me desirable candidate for the JET program, and I was very fortunate that I got in on my very first try. And
Mm.
I have a whole story about like the struggles I went through just trying to apply to the program. It's a funny story. If you want to hear it, I'm sure I'll tell it. But if not, I'll keep it moving. But nonetheless, I I agree. Do not for anyone listening out there, do not tailor your college career specifically just for the JET program. You got to think about whatever you're doing in college right now, whatever you're majoring in. You got to think more long term of
Hmm.
what you want to do, because that's pretty much what you have once you enter the workforce. All you have is your degree and whatever skills you acquired up to that point when you're applying for companies or organizations, etc.
Yeah, so maybe we can take a second to like kind of qualify and contextualize this, and then maybe we can talk about how it was when you were applying and interviewing for JET. But for
Sure.
me, so I was a PR major, writing minor. But the extracurriculars I did was I got into tutoring. I was part of like the international circle. Like I was taking all the Japanese classes available to me, and you know, making the point, arguing like how it could be for JET. I mean, I got in, right?
Right.
But coming back, trying to watch my language here. PR companies don't give a crap about international experience in that way. I should also contextualize that I'm from Arkansas originally. So Arkansas especially does not give a crap
Hmm.
about international experience. You would not believe, and I tell people all the time how hard it was to get interviews. Uh, of course, of course, the crossover skills are there, right? But you would not
Right.
believe the interviews I had. John, do you know how to use a computer? Like,
Really.
it, what do you think I made my lesson plans on? John, since most of your experience so far out of college is teaching in a classroom, like, you're you're probably only comfortable with the classroom, right? Like, I don't know if you'd feel
Hmm.
comfortable working in an office. Sounds straight up ridiculous, but that's what I
Hmm.
went through. And uh, I hope no one else goes through that. But because I did, and I
Absolutely.
know that I'm not the only one. Now, I think for you being like a education focused major, on one hand, you might think like there might be a little bit more crossover skills, but I also believe that there are certain schools that don't give a crap about ESL because they want you to have other teaching experience, right?
Hmm. Absolutely. So the JET program was kind of a stepping stone to where I am today, because it gave me I don't think I learned a lot about pedagogy, which is like how you teach per
Right.
se, but what it did teach me, or what it helped me with, was public speaking in
Mhm.
front of like a crowd of people and being confident in what I say and who I am in front of others. And I really appreciate the JET program for that alone. Um, but it did open doors because I taught English in Japan, to like when I came back to America, transitioned towards teaching at a language school, teaching adults, opened up doors for me to teach like at a community college here. And then because I worked with kids in Japan, it opened up the doors for me to teach at a public elementary school here. And right now, I'm still going through the certification process of becoming an official teacher, but I'm
Right.
what we would consider like alternate teacher,
Mhm.
which means like a teacher who is permitted to teach, but they still have to go through the procedures and take like extra courses to receive their standard license.
But you're on your way essentially. But
Yep.
that's also another thing that's also important because that stuff differs from state to state, and like
Hmm.
once you get all your credentials built in Jersey, but if you move, like you might have to do the whole shebang all over again.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. I believe you could transfer like your teacher's license once you get it, but it's just getting that first initial teaching license is really difficult.
Right.
But yeah.
Something that you said that I really like how you worded it. That's, again, it's really important to note. You talked about the teaching experience in Japan opening certain doors, but you have to capitalize on it, because every year, like, time goes by so quickly, for me, almost a decade from being from Japan. And for you, I mean, you're not too far away from that either.
Yep.
Again, job market's hard, the career struggles are there, but I remember what it was like, where it's like, wow, I'm still referencing like the JET program as like kind of like the big substantial career thing, and like it gets harder and harder to do that, especially with like whatever work you're looking for. So you saw those opportunities, you continue to build up your teaching experience, and like now you get to reference like things that are fresher and fresher and like more diversified, right?
Right. And if you are on the JET program, like there's plenty of time or opportunities that you can seek to do like other professional activities. For example, I ran while I was in Japan, I ran English club. We met like every Sunday, and members from the community would come. They pay about like 300 yen. And we basically conducted like activities in English, or I would teach like a mini lesson in English. Or we'll have like cookouts, or like kind of like a nomikai, where we would just kind of like talk and chat. I'm starting to forget like some of the words that we would use specifically for the activities we did, but yeah, we would just like gather together and do like different activities in English. So I sought out those opportunities, and this organization that I was a part of is still ongoing, and I'm able to attach my name to it, and I'm able to reference it. I can put it on my resume, and employers can look it up like on Facebook. Can I plug it? It's
Yeah,
a
go for
shameless plug, but okay. The group on Facebook is called Globish. So it sounds exactly as it's spelled exactly as it sounds. GLOBISH, and they're located in Hirosaki, Aomori. But occasionally, since I'm like far apart from Japan now, I would like make a Zoom call in and do some activities with everyone over there, and still kind of like manage it even from a distance. So there's opportunities out there, like, but you just have to really try to seek them.
Perfect transition here. So do you still make use of Japanese? Like, do you use the language at all these days?
When I talk to certain friends, like especially like around birthdays, I would say like, "Oh, otanjobi omedetou gozaimasu,"
Right.
or I have certain friends that I know they can't speak English as well, so I try to keep up with my Japanese. I don't study as much, but like I studied so diligently while I was in Japan, while I was in grad school, while I was a JET, that like some things I just don't forget.
Sure. So when you were on grad school, did you have any courses that were taught completely in Japanese?
Maybe not a course per se, but like classes definitely.
Okay, gotcha.
My program was predominantly English.
Yeah, and asking you if you keep up with Japanese study, like that's definitely like no guilt tripping, just pure curiosity. Because to me, to be honest, I haven't stuck with it, and it's really hard for me to. I don't like using the word motivated, but like to get motivated to use it, because you could list reasons on why it could be beneficial. Like I said, I work at like the consulate now, and like, tons of Japanese people around. Are there opportunities to use it? For sure. But like nothing's really resonating with me. So until, whatever skills acquisition you want to shoot for, like fitness is a good example, like there's plenty of reasons why you should be doing exercises and routines and that type of thing. But until you find that thing that really clicks with you, it's hard to stick with it. And I will also be very honest that I haven't put in as much time and effort to try to find that click for me. But also, one thing that separates us is you still have ties to Japan. Like you talk about still having like Japanese friends in that that Facebook group. I really don't have that anymore. Like things have faded, enough time has kind of passed, and that is what it is. But that explains the situation I'm at now.
Right. Well, I guess in my situation, most of my friends that I keep in touch with now are more so from grad school. I still keep in touch with some of the friends from Hirosaki, Aomori, Japan, but most of my friends are from like grad school because it's more recent. I finished like, I guess at this point, two or 3 years ago, I finished grad school. So yeah, I guess that's my connection with Japan. But there's plenty of like online forums, like I think Lang8 or Language Exchange or something like that, that you
Yep.
can log on to and find people to communicate with in Japanese. And yeah, you just gotta like kind of like seek seek the opportunities. There's like I live close to Princeton, which is like a heavily Japanese populated area in New
So
Jersey.
funny. Yeah, like one of my friends from Toyama, or one of the fellow Jets, like she's out in Princeton. So
Nice, yeah. There's a joke about Princeton that like if you live in New Jersey, no one goes to Princeton, but like everyone from out of town, like when they come to New Jersey, they want to go to
I,
Princeton.
I think I've heard her say that. So you're probably right on the money right there. And just to be clear, what you were alluding to, there are plenty of resources, avenues, and opportunities to connect and like learn Japanese. So I
Mhm.
don't have any excuse on that. All I just want to point out is despite all these reasons that make sense, that are completely true, nothing's really like struck a chord with me where I'm like, I am a member on Lang8, and I've gone through different years of like being more active on there, but I don't wake up saying, man, like can't wait to check Lang8 and see how my fake Japanese homies on there are doing,
Yeah. I mean, like, well, I don't think there's any shame because like we live in America and our life is conducted mostly in English,
Mm,
for better or for worse. But if you come back from Japan and you still want to keep up with your Japanese, like you shouldn't feel discouraged. Just living
right,
in America is going
right.
to make your Japanese deteriorate. It's kind of like a muscle. You gotta keep working it out, keep flexing it, and it'll stick with you.
Let me throw some shade real quick, like because on the inverse, like think about all those Jets who went over to Japan and they
Hmm.
didn't do any Japanese. They stayed in their
Oh yeah.
English bubble, So
Oh
the bubble
yeah.
opportunities there. Earlier, now you were talking about on your Jet interview, we were talking about building up the credentials. Now, for me, even though I did my best, I was only an alternate. I think you were shortlisted from the get go. Is that what happened?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
And it's so funny because since Jet and since coming back, I've actually helped out with interviews a lot. And I don't think I'd talk about on this call. Maybe when we're done recording, if you have any questions, we can speak off air. But the interview
Sure.
process is pretty interesting. And a lot of it's like pretty basic, honestly. Like a lot of times when you read on the forums and they're talking about like the trick questions and this and that, it's like so much unnecessary thought and consideration. But if I had to ask you, being like a little bit more blind to it,
Hmm.
um, what do you think like really made you stood out on your application, or like why do you think you were able to get shortlisted easily?
I don't think my application was that interesting
Mhm.
because I was a part of the Russian club at my school, and to be honest, like I didn't have like a strong interest in Russian culture at the time. I kind of joined it because I wanted to like be a part of some kind of leadership
Mm,
in my college,
sure.
and I was a part of the Japan club too, and I guess that kind of helped a little bit. But I think what made me stood out was like actually during the interview. So one of the questions or one of the things that they had me do, which will always like stay put in my mind, is they wanted me to do a mock lesson.
Mm,
But they wanted me to teach like a holiday in English, and they're going to pretend, and the interviewers were pretending to be like rowdy Japanese students. And I remember thinking to myself in that moment, like, oh shoot, I'm not prepared for this. Like, what am I going to do? So, like, I was trying to like teach. What holiday did I choose? Uh,
Christmas, Halloween, those are like
I
usually the common ones. Fourth of
Yep,
July.
Christmas. It absolutely was Christmas. Now that you mentioned it, it was Christmas. And yeah, I thought like, okay, everyone mentions Christmas. I'm sure like, what can I do to make it special? But like, they were pretending like they weren't listening. But then I started like singing like in Spanish, like Feliz Navidad.
Okay.
And I didn't even like know the words.
Wow, even better. But they probably didn't either.
I was just like speaking gibberish, but like they were just like rocking out to it, like swinging back and forth and like getting really into it. And I was like actually singing the song, and I'm like, oh man, I'm too shy to sing in front of anyone. Like I was a really shy guy at that time.
Same,
But
same.
I think that's what really helped me like get over that hurdle. Because I remember talking to one of the interviewers like afterwards, and I was like, I'm sorry about my performance. Like I feel really bad. And he said, oh no, don't worry, you were fine. And then yeah, shortly after that, like a month or two later, I got the notice like on April 1st that yeah, I'm going to Japan.
Jordan's life hack, just seduce your interviewers. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, what I could say on air is with any interview, I mean, the time is so short. Like whenever you're panicked and pressured, it might feel like a really long time, but that I feel like every single year, like the time gets shorter for how much they interview you. And to leave any kind of impression is kind of what you want to go in there with. So any kind of like weird, unusual, odd question, what can you really take away from that is like how someone handles pressure. So for you, you rolled with it, you went against your nature and you sang a freaking song, right? Reasonably so. Some other people, they buckle down and they cry or they get tongue tied, and that's also going to make sense. But if that's all you give them, and I think most judges are very reasonable, they're very empathetic and understanding that people are going to be nervous, but even if they try to give you like a lifesaver, like another line, you got to take that, because otherwise, even though they understand, it's like, hey, they're just nervous, and all we get is that choked up moment. All we get is that moment where they're frozen. You can only base it off that. You can't judge off like potential,
Right. And to anyone, I guess, that's watching and they're going to have the interview in the future, when you're at that interview and you encounter like a problem like that or a situation like that, think about how badly you want to go to Japan, how badly you want to join the JET program. Because that's, I think, what kind of helped me at that moment. I felt like, you know what, they're giving me this curveball. It's challenging, but I'm not going to let this be the reason that I don't go to Japan. So even if I don't like perform the best, like I'm going to give it my best. And once I know I did like the best that I could do, I'm satisfied with that, whether it's successful or not.
Yeah, it's good to know. And if I would have known that and taken that into my interview, because my interview had like a whole like good cop, bad cop type of situation. So like I had one person who was real friendly, and then there was like one judge who did not say a single thing, kept their eyes down on their notebook, and every time I said something, they would shake their head and like scribble in that notebook. And for me, being more naive, right? Like, oh, that gutted me. Like every single time I lost more and more confidence. And they did the thing where they like flipped around things. So for me, I had because I was tutoring, I had some teaching experience, right? So they said, John, we see that you have this teaching experience, but could you talk us through how that's going to be a disadvantage for the JET program? And if I was smart, I would have just dismissed it, right? I would have just been like, honestly, I can't think of how that would be a disadvantage. It only serve as like a pro. But then at that time, they did that Jedi mind trick stuff where basically I was just like poop talking myself,
So what did you tell them?
I don't even remember the specifics, but like I wasted time in the interview making kind of like a spiel for like 2 or 3 minutes, like how I just might be less qualified than compared to other people, where I shouldn't have fallen for that trap. Nobody else fall for that trap, know who you are, which is hard when you're in your early 20s, right?
Right. That's a curveball right there. I'm not even sure on the spot like how I would answer that. Right. But I always try to keep in mind, like when someone asks you a negative question like that in an interview, somehow spin it into like a positive. Like I guess you can mention something negative, but then bring it back to the positive like as soon as possible.
Right. Now, you're saying that at that time you were more nervous, and I want to say you're probably a lot more confident now. How else do you think you've changed, or like what other skills do you think you developed through this whole ordeal?
Coming from Japan, I learned how to be independent and live on my own, because I'm living in a foreign country by myself. Anything could go wrong, and there were some times where things went wrong, and I couldn't rely on my language, like my English native language, and I couldn't rely on my family to like get me out of like certain situations, like whether it be financial or I'm just lost somewhere. Yeah, so it taught me how to be more dependent on myself. And what are some of the ways that I grew? It made me feel more motivated and determined. So I was like really determined to learn Japanese. I was really determined to succeed. I was really determined to go to grad school in Japan. It made me like think about like the amount of effort and hard work that I have to really put into like accomplishing a goal and setting goals for myself.
It's good, man. And for a lot of people, it's kind of like that environment where you're going to be put in the fire to see if you can cultivate those skills or not. Because what you were saying about learning to be independent, there's plenty of people where they stayed there 5 years or even longer and they still didn't ever really kind of learn that, you know?
Right. Like, for example, I remember when I was in Japan one time and I had a problem with my cell phone, and no one can go with me. Like, my supervisor was too busy to go. All my coworkers, jet colleagues, everyone was like just too busy to like go to the phone store to help me. And I had very limited Japanese at the time. So like what I did was, before I went, I pre-studied like some words that I think I would need to use, or that I would anticipate that the tenning or the clerk would use at the SoftBank AU, whatever store I was at the time, would use. And it helped me. Like it was a struggle fest, of course, and I couldn't understand 90% of what the clerk was saying to me, but like I did overcome it somehow, and I was able to get my phone service. I was able to get my internet that I wanted, and yeah, after that, I realized, you know what, whether I truly believe I could do it or not, like as long as if I try, or like like I can do anything I really put my mind to, if like just like give it the effort.
What can I say about that? I mean, I truly want to give you props, Jordan, but I want to make sure I phrase it where it doesn't sound condescending, because I think
No,
some
go
people,
for it.
they might listen to
mind,
it and they might feel like, oh man, like that's so basic. But with, you're still teaching people and you're teaching like a younger crowd, but like I do coaching and I coach like a whole wide age range. And when it comes to language learning, it's so hard to pop that academic bubble where, what am I talking about? I'm talking about like, okay, taking language learning as something passive, but to use it, you need to look and think into like the context. So you're talking about dealing with some phone issue, and you're talking about anticipating what is that conversation going to be like. A lot of people don't do it. They think that, oh, I'm just going to study this vocabulary, I'm just going to learn this grammar, and then I'm going to jump into that situation, I'm going to know how to handle it. No, because you need to think of it as something living, something that's real, something that has back and forth. Like that's what the conversation and communication is about. And you also kind of exercise that by fumbling through conversation and speaking.
Yep, trial and error.
So I mean, that's another soapbox of mine, since I do work as like a speech coach. But if you want to improve your speaking, you have to talk more, right? And you have to fail at it, and you have to suck at it. And same thing goes with any other kind of skill. But props to you for doing that, because I also worked as a PA, and a lot of people, whatever support you can get, you want to take advantage of it. So what you were saying initially is like, oh, you wanted to make use of your supervisor or a friend, and they just couldn't do it. So like explore those resources. But if you're going to like jump into a situation where you're intimidated, yeah, try to give it a little bit of foresight. You can't predict everything, right? But it shouldn't be completely alien. If you were trying to do something with your phone here in the US, like what would be the common topics? What are they probably going to discuss? It's not going to be like, oh, it's Japan, it's completely different. Another soapbox, I hate that narrative. Like, does Japan do some things differently? Of course, but I always hated, Jordan, is so different here in Japan, man. Like, oh, Japanese people do this, but in America, did you experience that a lot?
Like comparing like Japan to America?
Yeah.
I think I did some of it a lot myself.
Okay.
But yeah,
you're on your YouTube channel all the time, guys. This is Japan. They got convenience stores, dude. Like in America,
I'm always like, oh man, these workers at the convenience store, they're so nice. But if you just go to like America, they're just like, next person come.
Right.
But in Japan, they're like, it's almost like, I'm not gonna say they're genuine about it, because they're employed, but like they seem more welcoming. Like when you enter the like convenience stores and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, even to this day, I still like do a lot of comparison between like America and Japan. And I was like, oh, things are different in Japan, or oh, maybe the food, or I could get more with my money here for food, or like whatever else I buy.
Oh, sure.
here than I would like in Japan.
Mm-hmm. When you were in Japan, what was some of the food you missed the most?
Like from America?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man. I think just like ethnic food. Like I love to try food from other culture, like Thai food and Greek food, Indian
Mm-hmm.
food, Chinese food. I know it's not the same like if you were to get it like authentically, like from the actual place, like the countries or whatever. But it's I still miss those things. Like, and I miss like I guess being in like an English world. The Japanese word would be like Aiken,
Mm-hmm.
like English speaking world, where like I could just step outside and people may be talking, and without putting in any effort, I could just understand what's going on around me. But like when I'm in Japan, like there's a lot of chitter chatter going on, and if I really want to understand what's going on, like I would have to like really focus and hone in on like what they're saying. And sometimes I didn't understand what they were talking about. Other times I would, depending on the conversation. But yeah, that's to make a long story short. I'm just going on a tangent a little bit. Like what I really missed about home when I was in Japan was like just different food and like being able to like understand people without effort, or just understanding the culture of like why a person behaves in the way that they do.
So
How
would
about
you say,
yourself?
I mean, yeah, like that's a bit to process just because we're different in that regard, where I think about like, wow, like how can I tune out more people like versus like being more aware of what everyone's saying? Because I think there's like a lot of noise and earlier you're talking about still being on Facebook, for example, like, man, and I mean, like how we connected since like the YouTube video, like you're wanting to communicate through a DM on Instagram. I'm like, oh man, I gotta re-download and hop on Instagram. I hate social
I'm
media.
sorry about that, man.
No, it's all good. Like very, very easy to link up in that way. Um, but when you were flipping it back on me, what did I miss? Food wise, I don't know. I think I like Japanese food all right. Like what did I miss about America though? Again, I think it gets harder and harder for me because like honestly, if it weren't for me being contracted to the consulate right now, enough time has passed where the jet program honestly feels like a dream. For you, I don't know
Mhm.
if you visited Japan again since you did grad school, but you did jet and then you did grad school, right? And that's still not that long ago. But me,
Mhm.
like over a decade, I haven't visited Japan since. And like I was
Mhm.
saying, most of my connections have kind of like dwindled down. Uh, jet friends aside, but like most of the contacts and friends who are Japanese I made in Japan. So sometimes I'll wake up and I'll be like, did I ever actually really go to Japan? It's a very, very weird,
Wow.
weird feeling. So I want to be able to answer your question. I want to be able to be like, oh yeah, like I missed hot dogs or something like that.
I
But I really can't conjure up anything like that.
have a question for you.
Mhm.
Have you ever like made friends with someone on Facebook, like in Japan, and then like now that all this time has passed, you can't remember like who the person is, like how you met them, where you met them,
Oh yeah,
or
absolutely.
like even how to read their names?
And it so, so with it without even having to like comment about like the specifics of like being Japanese or what you're talking about, I think like that again, that's just like a problem with social media. So like you keep growing
Hmm.
the network, you want a friend, and again, don't for people who love social media or people who overthink like the connection and reaching out, don't overthink that. If you want to like ask or reach out, I mean, the way that you reached out to me, like always be up for it because what's the worst that could happen on that front?
Hmm.
But if you don't continually cultivate things, if if you and my connection, it was just that YouTube comment and like 6 years down the line, I'm sorry, dude. Like you're not that cool where I would remember you just from that YouTube comment alone. But like we have this podcast, and whatever comes from this, we end up doing another episode or something else percolates. Like I don't know with the gaming stuff. Like you're building upon those memories. Like for some of those contacts like you make in Japan, it might just be from like that international English meetup thing, or it might have been
Hmm.
like a friend of a friend where you had dinner with them one single time and they didn't even talk to you that much, right? So
Hmm.
um, I don't know where you're going with it, but if you're like feeling bad about not remembering, I would say don't sweat that too much.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I was feeling bad about that. Like for example, just yesterday, I saw someone update their Facebook saying that they're married, and I guess like when I clicked on their name and everything, like we went to the same school together, and I looked at their pictures, and I'm just like I'm sure this person like lived in my dorm, but like I don't remember encountering them at all. Like I don't remember who they are.
It's just gonna happen, man. Like the more and more time goes by, because like every once in a while, I have like an old student who will reach out to me, and sometimes like I'll remember some gossip about them. I'm like, oh yeah, that student. And then sometimes they'll be like, they'll say like, oh yeah, I was in your class, John. I'm like, well, that doesn't narrow things down whatsoever, you know.
Right. Interesting. But to whoever the person, to those people out there, please don't get offended if I don't remember you. I'll at least pretend like I remember because I don't want to offend anyone, and like any encounter I have with any person in this world, I treasure it. It's important to me. Like especially if I become friends with you on Facebook, like I don't just befriend anyone. Like I have to like really connect with you in some way, or like
let me give you this anecdote, and maybe like it'll put a little bit more peace of mind for you, because I honestly don't think you should worry about it too much. So you know, you can't live too much in the past, right? Like whatever nugget memory golden time you had, that's great, that's wonderful. You know, you can cherish that as much or as little as you want, but what's happening now? And like if the connection is pretty much empty, I had my own qualms and journey with that, but I've come to peace. Like that's just what happens with some connections. Like they're not every single one's meant to last forever, and that gives you like better appreciation for like your close homies, right? But likewise, and it's been amazing for me. And if anybody hasn't experienced this, like you'll eventually experience it too. I had some like nasty connections where I'm like, I hate this dude's guts, or like, wow, what a jerk that guy was, only to have it turn out the complete opposite, where I'm like, wow, I'm closer with that dude than I was with the people I thought I was close with back at that time. So you just never know. But whatever happens in the past happens. I'm not even telling people to forgive people or whatever. It's just look at the timeline. So what happened then, what's happening now, and you just don't know what's going to happen down the line. And Jordan, please don't burden yourself on like trying to like do a one-way type of friendship. Like they got to be putting up something for you too. Like it can't just be guilt tripping you.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Like, I mean, if the person's like actively like reaching out, and same for me too. Like it's I guess relationship, communication, all those things are like a two-way street. Like you both got to like actively like reach out to each other in order to maintain that relationship. So, I mean, I guess if that person just kind of fades away in my memory a little bit, maybe I shouldn't feel so guilty about it.
I'll give you this this very cheesy but very apt line that my old high school football coach gave me, where at the time it blew my mind. Because I was super emo back in the day, and I was like definitely way too real crazy. But he said, John Dow, like, do you think a good relationship is 50-50? And at the time I said, yeah, right? Like 50% both ways. And he said, wrong. A good relationship is 100% both sides.
Oh.
And I was like, whoa, that's like my first like exposure to being woke, where now that enough time has passed, I would just like put a little asterisk by it, you know, because context is really important. Because if you look at it like for anybody who just might need a little bit clarification, right? If you stick with like 50-50, then you keep tabs. Then you're always like trying to weigh, well, he did this, I should do this and that. That's like overthinking, right? If you're gonna idealistically put in 100%, that just means like you put your full effort, right? What I would contextualize is now, you know, seeing more and more degrees of people, if you're not both going to be given 100%, just make sure that you're both on the same page. Like if you're both only going to give like 5%, then okay, we're cool. You know, he's giving 5%, I'm giving 5%. We're not like keeping tabs on it. Like that's the biggest thing you want to avoid from like the 50-50 mindset, where you're trying to unrealistically, unnaturally keep it balanced. But it doesn't work like that, right? Because someone's always going to be given more effort, right?
Absolutely agree. Right. That was a really well put way to put it. I really like what your high school football coach told you.
Yeah, tweet it out, man. Yeah, like put that tattoo on the arm right there. As we're winding down here, Jordan, was there anything else that you wanted to cover on this recording for today?
No. If you have like any more questions you wanted to ask me, or if you wanted to like quickly talk about any other subjects or anything, like I'm all
Oh,
for it.
let's just maybe finally like touch base on, I kind of alluded it to it, and I know you've briefly covered it in some of your other videos, but that idea of, obviously, I don't think you would do the JET program again, but I think
Hmm.
in one of your older videos, did you even make the comment that maybe you might not have done the JET program at all to begin with?
Right. Yeah. So there's a story to that. Um, it's not because I didn't want to apply. It's more
Right.
of just because like I was a goofball. So the story is that when I applied, I remember you have to get your two recommendations from like a professor if you're in college.
Hmm.
So one professor I asked, he really didn't want to do the recommendation for me for whatever reason. And he was
Wow.
one of my Japanese professors. And I don't know why. Like I really adored this guy. I looked up to this guy so much. And he had like everything I aspired to have like in my life at some point. Like he's been to Japan and he could speak Japanese so well, and he just didn't want to write my recommendation. He said, "Oh, Jordan, you haven't been in my class in like 2 years. Why should I write a recommendation letter for you? Why don't you ask like another teacher?" And I said, "Well, I want you to do it because I really enjoyed your class, and you're one of my best professors I ever had." Like it was kind of heartbreaking that he didn't want to do it,
Hmm.
but he eventually did. But then I screwed up on my end because like literally the weekend before the Monday where the application was due, I didn't have anything prepared. I didn't have any of my transcripts. I went to three different schools, two in New Jersey and then one in like upstate New York. I
Wow.
remember back then I was free on Fridays. I didn't have any classes on Fridays. So I was just casually thinking about the JET program, like, okay, let me just make sure I got everything. And then I realized, okay, I don't have my transcripts. So I had to get into my car, which was like a lemon at the time. Like that car could break down at any point.
We've all been there, man. We've all had that type of car.
And I was living like in central Jersey at the time. So like I had to drive around to like my college up North Jersey, which was like an hour and a half away from where I lived. And then I had to drive like another 3 hours up to like mid-state New York to go to my other college I went to just to get my transcripts. And then I had to like rush to like the post office to like express mail my application so that it will reach the consulate by 4 p.m. on Monday. And I was like 100% confident that it was not going to make it at all. But yeah, I just did it. I made the drive. I had to drive through New York City, which was one of the craziest drives I ever had to do in my life at the age of 21.
Hmm.
And yeah, I submitted and everything went through. Like it, so I felt like it was kind of like meant to be in a sense. Like,
Wow.
if if I didn't submit my application, like if I just told myself like, nah, I don't feel like going to it. I don't feel like going to get my transcripts, or it's useless. I'm not going to be able to make it in time. All the experiences, or I probably would not be where I am today if I decided not to go. So it's insane. Like I wouldn't have any of those experiences in Japan if I decided to just like shortchange myself that day.
Don't be lazy. Essentially.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. In a nutshell,
Yeah.
like if you're going to put that application together, if you want to apply, like get it done as soon as possible, and then get on with your life, whatever else you got going on in your life.
How soon did you apply for the tax refund thing when you came back to the States?
I didn't. I didn't. I didn't receive any information about applying for it. I didn't get any pension, so I just kind of let it go.
What? Dude, you were there
Yeah.
for 3 years?
Yep.
Dude, that's like 10 grand. Like don't don't sit on that, dude. Like how much like could you be better off with like a extra 10 grand
Oh
right
God!
now?
Don't tell me that.
Yeah,
Uh,
get on it. Dude, like we're talking about like the two-way, like reach out to those people, even if you don't remember their face, like figure out what your school is, like get that in order, man. 10 grand. Like, don't sleep on that.
wow. Wow, man. Yeah, no one told me about it. Honestly, I didn't know about it until like maybe like a couple years after.
Dude, your
But yeah.
PA, your regional reps, they dropped the ball. That was like the biggest thing that I always try to harp on when I was running it. And like that was one of the things I took care of like as soon as possible when I came back. Of course, like that money went by real quick because I'm originally from Arkansas and I moved up to Boston. So like that type of
Mhm.
move to a bigger city, like just like that. But everyone's talking about the stimulus checks, man, like 10 times the amount of a stimulus check, dude.
Absolutely. Wow, man, I could start a business with 10 grand.
Dude, get on it. Because it's not like I'm no professional in this. I don't think there's like a statute of limitations with it, but it's well worth exploring either way,
Right, right. You know what? I can reach out to my old supervisor, see if he's still around. I'm sure he's still working for the city, or he could tell me like who to contact in
If
order to like
anything,
get that
like
money.
the prefecture of your old place, like your prefectural advisor has to have this information. Like it's something that they have to be covering. Like whether they actually did or not, like there's some file drawer out there that they could fax you. You know what I mean?
Right. I guess I was kind of like worried, like, oh, all this time has passed now, so they probably just threw it away. But you're right. Like, what's my excuse? Like, I have nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. All right.
10 grand. Like, that's a shame to walk away from like that huge amount of money.
Yes. 100%. So yeah, maybe we'll nip it on the bud right there, just so you can sit with it to get off your butt, get that 10K. But Jordan, if people want to reach out with you, or how could they follow you? What do you want to plug here on your socials?
Sure. So I have a YouTube channel that I actively post videos on. It's more of a gaming channel, and I talk about like anime on it too. But my YouTube channel is TeacherGotGame, and my Instagram that I'm active on as well is TEZ425, and I have Twitter too. I'm not as active on it yet. I mostly use it for like school related things, but it's the same as my YouTube channel, TeacherGotGame. And I have a Twitch channel as well. It's Aomori Jord, AOMORIJORD.
Nice. And you're streaming gameplay on that, or what?
Yeah, it's been a while since I streamed some gameplay, but I'm trying to get back into it, especially as I built my community on YouTube.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I will be getting into it soon. But I definitely have it reserved just in case. But yep, I'll be streaming some gameplay.
Awesome.
I'm looking at I'm playing like Friday the 13th.
Oh, real. How old is that game now?
About 3 years ago.
2016, yeah, or so. Okay.
But it's
All
still
right.
like have an active community. Yeah,
Right.
still enjoy it.
Online's still up and servers still running. Cool. Well, Jordan, good talking with you, man.
Likewise.